part of what we experience in this Torah portion may be a familial jealousy or envy, or it may a communal and leadership envy. And that is part of the overall focus of this particular Torah portion. For those of you who are just tuning in right now, I'm broadcasting from Kol Ami, Congregation Kol Ami in West Hollywood. It is historically an LGBTQ congregation. They are just installing a new rabbi this morning, and I'm doing the installation starting at 10 o'clock. So I'm here, so I don't have to drive across the city. And I'm in one of their clergy rooms with lovely Center for Spiritual Living. So let's invoke the blessing together for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. May we soak into the words of Torah and may they infuse our hearts and souls. So today we continue to recognize the hostages and pray for their freedom. We are grateful that whatever explosive things were going on between Israel and Iran are not going on right now, and hope again for peace, for the return of the hostages, for some quiet settlement of Gaza, for Palestinians to have a home, for Israel to live in peace with their neighbors. And so we are here in Korach, which is also about rebellion and kind of fighting between either family members or communal members. So the context is that we're in the desert. Moses' cousin Korah stands up and wants to be counted as part of the leadership team with Moses and wants to be considered Moses' equal, which may be problematic just from the start, simply because Moses has been designated to be the leader of the people, and he's been the one at God's right hand, schlepping them out of Egypt and into the desert. And here we are in the desert community. And I'd like to have somebody start with the reading of the text. Rebecca, do you see it?
Yes.
Great. Can you start at the beginning of Parsha Korah in the Women's Torah 895, Eitz Chaim 860, and Plout. Diane, what page do you want them Plout? Please unmute.
Maybe it's 900. I'm not sure I have, but
Okay.
that sound right? I'm not sure. It says 118 maybe. It's in the middle of a paragraph.
Okay, let's start.
Now Korath, the son of Izhar, son of Dathan, and Abiram, the son of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses, with a number of the people of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men. And they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said to them, "You have gone too far, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?"
So those are powerful words and a great way to start a specific parsha, in that you're taking too much power and authority for yourselves, Moses. And another translation we read, you go too far, for the community is holy, all are holy before God. Why do you, Moses, raise yourself above the congregation? So what is Korach saying here? What is his argument?
Everybody's holy.
And
that Moses is doing too much.
ah, What is Korach's feeling?
Left out.
And that leads to,
Jealousy.
I didn't hear you.
Jealousy.
Jealousy. So we've got jealousy and anger going on in this specific congregation, parsha, and that is the theme that seems to be going on here. And is Korach accurate? So yes is raise your hand. No's raise your hand. Okay, so Mara and Harv, why is he not accurate?
He's putting himself above Moses, who God selected to be the leader. And he just decided that he didn't like the way things were going, so he's going to lead. That's not a good management style, number one. And number two, he put himself above everybody else in a
So
way.
he's doing what he's accusing Moses of.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And then I'll add something I said in Torah study yesterday, which is it doesn't appear that his desire is for the sake of heaven. It's for his own sake.
Ah, so ego. You got ego up there, and that's part of the backdrop. Any other comments why you think? Okay, Marina, I see your comment, your hand.
I didn't raise a hand in either of your polls, whether he's right or he's wrong, because I think on the one hand, Moses is above the congregation because he was chosen, he's the leader, he has a lot of responsibilities. On the other hand, it was not his choice. He did not appoint himself as the leader, and he bears it as a very heavy crown, as a responsibility put on his shoulders. So he's not to blame for being the leader, but he is the leader.
Interesting, yes. And he was ambivalent about leadership. He kind of said, God, why me? I can't even speak right. I stumble over my words. I'm a stutterer. Pick somebody else. No, no. God's zeroed in on Moses, and he has been the one that, since he was in the water, pulled him out of the water. Eric, I see your hand.
He's like the Godfather. This whole thing reads like The Godfather by Mario Puzo. You know, somebody wants a piece of the action. He wants a piece of the action too. It sounds very familiar to The Godfather.
Okay, that's an interesting interpretation. Thank you. And I think that there's the hand of God and the hand of Moses going on behind the scenes, and many times, and that's what you're alluding to do. So we've got some things else. Thank you. Herman, I see your hand.
Rabbi, to me, it's rather obvious that Moses was chosen by God to appear before Pharaoh. I think nobody can deny that. I'm going back into the Bible when I say nobody. He was chosen to go to Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go." But where is the authority to the people for him to continue being the leader? Maybe that's where the jealousy comes in.
So that's an interesting point, because sometimes the startup leader, the founder of the organization or the company or the nation, doesn't have the next skills to do leadership in the next phase of development of an organization or a community or a synagogue or a nation. And you're saying, well, maybe he was selected for that initial purpose, but now has he kind of outgrown his leadership skills? Is he getting to an age where maybe he's not attending to all the details or not so interested in the negative voices? And Korach is one of those negative voices that is getting underneath. So I'm going to pull up, I'm going to share my screen if it will work and show you some texts that, are they here? Can you see this? Can you read it?
Yes.
So there's some interesting commentary regarding Korach and Moses, and particularly from verse 4, where I don't think we've read verse 4 yet, but Rebecca, would you read verse 4? And then we'll go to this commentary, which is a Hasidic commentary.
When Moses heard it, he fell on his face. And he said to Korah and all his company, in the morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. Whom he will choose, he will cause to come near to him. Do this, take censers, Korah and all his company, put fire in them and put incense upon them before the Lord tomorrow, and the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the Holy One. You have gone too far, sons of Levi.
Aha. So again, the reference is, let's go back to the initial offering. God is the one who appointed me. You're going to be reminded of that when the offering comes tomorrow morning. I didn't do this. Somebody else appointed me who's bigger, who's grand, who's the God of all our people and all the world, and maybe the Godfather behind the scene. And what we have here is Moses reminding people of the initial ask. God asked me to do this. And he's underlining that to say, you'll see who God chooses and God chooses again. But watch out, Korach. Watch out. So I want to go to this commentary. I like Art Green, who had been a professor at Hebrew College and Jewish Theological Seminary, and the Reconstructionist Seminary. And he and a number of other people have translated many Hasidic commentaries in a book called Speaking Torah. And I zeroed in a couple of comments that I think are interesting.
Rabbi, could you make it a little larger, please?
Can I make it a little larger? I'm going to do my best. I don't. Somebody tell me how to do that. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm going to do that. Let me see if I can make it larger. Oh,
Yep.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Would somebody read this then?
The Talmud interprets Moses' statement found in Numbers 16, 4 through 15. You always arouse your good side, and when you don't, your bad side arises. However, when you are at a low spiritual level and in the presence of an elevate
Sadiq.
you may not be able to arouse your good side. The greatness of the Sadiq will overwhelm you. But if the Sadiq is humble, this will not happen.
Hi, Claire.
Moses
The class.
was the most humble of all people. I have not done anything to disturb another or arouse their evil side. Talmud says, I have not provoked the desires of any person. I did not damage one of the life force in them.
Aha. So this is the message of the one in leadership and a message to leadership. Moses was humble, and the Talmud is underlining that, saying Moses was actually a humble leader, and he didn't try to arouse the bad side, meaning jealousy, anger, envy, but it has happened. But he didn't provoke. Korach is what the Talmudic interpretation is reinforcing. He is saying, use your strengths to support and other people, to encourage other people to be the best they can be, rather than overwhelming them. So the Talmud is siding with Moses in this particular situation. Okay. Now, there's another commentary, and I'll enlarge it as well, now that I know how to do this. This is another a 19th century Polish commentary, Yosher Divrei Emet. The straight speaker of Torah is what his title was. And his question is, why do you uplift yourselves over the congregation of God, Korach or Moses? So his response, Korah's conflict with Moses took place despite Moses's characteristic of humility. Yet some grandiosity remained in certain things he did, and he acted like a king among his people. Any thoughts about that? Did Moses act as a king among his people?
I don't think so. I think Moses did what Moses was told to do. I don't think he knew any other way.
Any other thoughts? David Caden, I see you. Oh, Roy, I see your hand is up.
I think David may have been first.
Oh, yeah. Well, Moses never personally benefited from anything like a king typically does. Even when there were donations for the tabernacle and people gave, and he made sure there were accountings for it, he didn't even want to give an appearance of impropriety that he received anything personally from it. So I don't think he acted like a king. He acted like per God's instructions. And he even not argued, but indicated he was not qualified to do certain things, like argue with Pharaoh, and he had the stutter, etc. So I don't think he acted like a king. And then as far as him going to the end of his potential, he did go to the end of his potential when he was not allowed to enter Eretz Israel. And I think that's symptomatic of what some people said here, Herman and some other people, that at some point our contributions to a company, a country, but Moses's did. And I think that's a lesson that no matter how great a leader we are of any group organization, we're not indispensable. And one other thing, and I'll let it go. And Moses delegated. He was trying to deal with everybody's problems, decisions, small, large. And then wasn't it Jethro who told him, you have to delegate. You can't physically and mentally deal with all this. And so he willingly appointed the tribe's leaders to handle the lower level disputes.
Great. Thank you, David, for inputting that. That he was willing to share leadership. He said the only way we're going to do this is if have some right hands and left hands, associates all over the place, judges who can hear cases, people who can take care of others pastorally. So he could expand himself not through himself by extending the quality of leadership onto other people. What a gift. And he picked good leaders. I see, Ray, your hand is up.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for your remarks. I find it interesting that you led with whether Moses was enjoying material gain as such as a king might. And I don't know enough Aramaic to know how to say emoluments clause in Aramaic or in Hebrew, so we'll skip that point. But as to your question, Rabbi, whether Moses behaved as a king, myself, I find it a bit ambiguous. We don't see overt narratives of him abusing his power. I mean, just about the only one that comes to my mind of a breach that is documented in the text is his disobeying God's injunction and striking the rock. But beyond that, I find the question, did Moses behave as a king? I find that ambiguous in the text, because what I think we encounter again and again in the text, particularly through Leviticus and beyond, is there is an amorphous trajectory in the narrative of when the text explicates and God spoke to Moses and then said, and then attributes particular words to God. And then we have very lengthy, sometimes extending multiple parashot accountings of then Moses said to the children of Israel. And sometimes Moses attributes things that he's saying to God. Sometimes Moses does not explicitly attribute them to God. And I think there is stunning ambiguity between what we know from what Torah spells out that God actually said, what Moses said, which may or may not have all originated with something God said or all been a faithful replication of what God said. And I think there is tremendous room of unknowns in how do we get to what is reported to have come out of Moses' mouth versus what did God command Moses to do and say. So I think it's entirely possible that between what Moses heard and what Moses spoke and effectuated, he may well have behaved like a king. I think we do not, from the text, know the answer to that question.
And that's why we're talking about it, because I really think nobody does. And that question of were the words that Moses said put in Moses's mouth by God, or later editors strengthened the text they received and built Moses' character and power and leadership up in some ways. But this particular commentary from the 19th century Poland, Yosher Divrei Emet, goes on, and he says, even though Korach possessed both intelligence and the Holy Spirit, a spark of envy remained in him. Korach thought it was Moses' sense of his own greatness that caused him to exalt himself over the communities. He said, "Why do you uplift yourself above God's congregation?" Korach never thought he's displayed grandiosity, meaning the question that was placed might be what Korach was transferring to Moses, and he never reflected it back. David.
Doesn't the Torah itself, when it says that Moses was the most humble person on earth, address the question of whether he acted or was acted like a king? Because if he was the most humble person, then by definition, he couldn't be a king. He couldn't act like a king because a king is not humble. And even if everybody, all of us have egos, if he was the most humble person, then his ego was non-existent or so minimal that he wouldn't be acting like a king.
It's interesting that many times in history, people promote a leader in terms of their power and not their humility. So here we have the biblical text and then later rabbinic material saying this guy who was the leader, Moses, was a leader, but he didn't take up all the air in the room. And he empowered other people. So that question of why do we see a leader as humble? What quality does that give us? Is an important part. How should a person that is a leader express humility and yet have wisdom and clarity and forbearance to lead? And another thinker who's a professor at Hebrew College in Boston discussed this matter of balance between leadership and humility. And Orr Rose writes, a potential leader needs to accept and own some sense of potential, a willingness to step forward. Leadership requires boldness and self-assertion alongside with humility. Can you name a leader who had that? Rebecca.
I just want to say I looked up the definition of humility, and there's a different definition of humility for the Bible specifically. So it says in the Bible, humility is not just about being modest or having low self-esteem, but rather about recognizing one's dependence on God and submitting to his will.
What dictionary is that?
Pardon me? Oh,
Okay.
it's just internet search.
Okay, so that's a very religious definition. And some people say, well, maybe that's why Moses behaved as he did, because Moses knew God was the leader. Moses said, I'm a human being. I must make mistakes. I stumble over my speech. I insult people. I even insulted my sister. What am I but a human being? And that's part of the question. Who is the leader? Fern, I see your hand.
Yeah. I think that if we look at American history, we see Abraham Lincoln as somebody who was both humble and a strong leader. And I think part of it has to do with he was self-effacing, but he was also somebody who looked, his ambition was for the society as a whole and not simply to promote himself.
Thank you. Thank you. Mara and Harv.
Two things. One, for in Musar, humility is not taking up too much space, but not taking up too little space. So there's a balance in terms of your behavior.
Yeah.
The other thing is,
How do you get in?
David,
Can you please, other people, turn off your microphone if you
It's
want? Not?
David's.
David, you need to mute.
Okay, Mara, keep going.
the other thing is, I look at this section as a question about how we disagree, or how we discuss our differences. And I think neither Korach nor, and perhaps especially Moses, doesn't find a way to disagree in a useful way. Moses immediately just turns to God, as opposed to, let's talk about this. How do you feel? Why do you feel the way you do? I'm very interested in this. Maybe it's something I've done.
So maybe Moses didn't have conflict resolution skills, that would allow him to go into the conversation deeply and say maybe we can agree to disagree.
And so again, I think that goes back to how do you have a, a conversation about your disagreement in a way that is for the sake of heaven, not for the sake of self.
Nicely put. Thank you. Thank you. I see David, you're next, and one other, and then we're going to go back to the text.
I think Joshua fulfills these traits that you put in your text now, bold leadership, boldness, self-assertion alongside humility, because he totally supported Moses as his is the leader in charge. He never badmouthed him. He supported him. He had boldness and self-assertion when he went out with the other spies and they came bad-mouthing or being afraid of the land that they inspected. He stood up for his beliefs and told Moses and the other tribe leaders what the truth was more accurate. And so I think Joshua fulfills those characteristics of leadership.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Howard Weisberg, I see your hand.
Hi. I'm just wondering why it says you have gone too far, sons of Levi, but at the beginning it says that it was Korach was a son of Levi, but Dathan and Abiram were sons of Eliab, and On was the son of Peleth, descendants of Reuben. So
It's interesting. The text in the women's commentary, it says, you've gone too far, Rav Lachem, an idiom that more literally means it's more than enough for you.
but
Die,
that's just somebody.
speak.
That's just somebody inventing something, but it's nothing in the text, isn't
it is
Rav Lechem.
Rav Lechem. Verse, let me just find it. Vayikol Moshe Yal Aaron v'Yom Rav Lechem. It is just too much for you. Or die Lechem, Maspik Lechem. What do you say in English? Dayenu. In Yiddish, Dayenu. Enough already.
Yeah, but as far as Levi goes, I mean, that's a different subject. It says Rav Lechem B'nai. What?
I'm not hearing you clearly.
Rav Lechem B'nai Levi.
You know what? So he's just saying, you've gone too far. That's enough in terms of being a rebellious voice. You've taken it too far right now.
Yeah, that's fair. But why does he call them sons of Levi when earlier they aren't sons of Levi?
Why does I see only the Torah text and the commentary here?
It says sons of Levi, but
You read on.
in verse one. In verse one, it says.
Why is he giving the lineage? At the beginning, he gets the lineage to say, look, Korah comes from the right family. He also comes from the Levites where Moses came from. So he's got a certain amount of status that one might think he would be potential for leadership, and he might have been in line. But it's very clearly saying, now Korah, son of stood to rise up against Moses. Korach vayakumu lifnei Moshe. And he purposely stood against Moses, and he had a group of other people with him, the other people who were sort of dissatisfied. Let's take one more hand, and then I want to go to verse 8 through 15 that goes into this further. Okay, Brad, I see you.
Yeah, Rabbi, to change topics completely, I'm intrigued by the fire pan. And, fire seems to play such an important role in the book of Numbers. God appears as fire. We've got, what's his, Aaron's sons with
Nadab
the
and
fire.
Abihu.
And
Yeah.
now we've got the fire pan involved here. What's the deal with fire in this book?
Well, it really comes from Leviticus,
Hmm.
where a lot of the priestly action goes on and the instruction. But fire is the way to invoke God's presence and see God in the light and in the dark. The women's commentary on page 896 has a comment. Diane, are you with us? Does anybody else have women's Torah commentary?
I do.
I'm in Cloud and I can't find where we are.
Page 896
No,
at
no,
the
don't raise
very
my hand.
bottom of the page.
Cindy has.
I have it. What do you want me to read?
Page 896, the very last line at the bottom of the commentary, verse 6 through 7 on the far right, bottom right.
Okay. Take fire pans and lay incense on them. It was precisely a misuse of incense that had resulted in the deaths of Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu. Korah is making a claim on the priesthood, so Moses challenges Korah to demonstrate that he can perform a priestly task. Moses' test does not aim to show who can best perform priestly services for the community. Rather, it is designed to demonstrate that God is the one who has chosen Aaron for the priesthood.
So the point in this is one of the points that was made before, that Moses is uplifting God's presence, even through the fire that looks like it's controlled by the priest at the Aron with the burning incense. But fire in religion is a power symbol. And people who can operate that power have it. And what the text is emphasizing is Moses didn't pick Aaron, his brother, to be the spokesperson. God did. So again, Moses says, Korah, you can try to manipulate the fire pan, but it's really God who's the one who's going to make the action of accepting the offering at the fire work. So we've got, again, God behind the scene, but very much up front. Let's go in the Torah text to verse 8. Somebody want to read?
I'll continue.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca.
And Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi, is it too small a thing for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do service in the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them, and that he has brought you near him and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you? And would you seek the priesthood also? Therefore, it is against the Lord that you and all your company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you murmur against him?" And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram and the sons of Eliab, and they said, "We will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must also make yourself a prince over us? Moreover, have you not brought us into the land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards? Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up."
So they are all rebelling against Moses. And then Moses gets irritated. This gets under his skin. His leader calm, his non-judgmental presence is just shaken to the core. And he goes on, verse 15.
And Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one ass from them, and I have not harmed one of them." And Moses said to Korah, "Be present, you and all your company before the Lord, you and they and Aaron tomorrow, and let every one of you take his censer and put incense upon it, and every one of you bring before the Lord his censer, 250 censers. You also and Aaron, each his censer. So every man took his censer, and they put fire in them and laid incense upon them. And they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Then Korah assembled all the congregation against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation.
So everybody's got a fire pan. Korah is saying all of our rebels can get the access to God and deliver the message and receive God's message. We're all here, 250 of us. But then God steps in.
And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be angry with all the congregation? And the Lord said to Moses, say to the congregation, get away from about the dwelling of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Moses...
Jump to verse 31.
And as he finished speaking all these words, the ground under them split asunder, and the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed them up, with their households and all the men that belonged to Korah, and all their goods. So they and all that belonged to them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished in the midst of the assembly. And all Israel that were around them fled at their cry, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up. And fire came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering the incense.
So, in case you want to rebel against God, watch out. The earth will open up and swallow you. And maybe we have one of the first recorded stories capturing an earthquake, but it really comes from the question of who is asserting power. Howard, I see your hand.
I'm thinking, that I'm looking in Richard L. Friedman's book, where he takes this text and breaks it down into which of the different threads are, and where this particular chapter is a mixture. It has priestly in it, and it has the J text, and Dothan and Abraham only appear in the J parts, the fragments. And in fact, he points out that in the Greek translation, they're not even mentioned. So what we're dealing with here is a jumble of two different stories that have been sort of somewhat reconciled with each other, but really don't make any sense because they contradict each other.
So textually, they've been woven together to create this
together, two different texts have been woven together, and they try to make it consistent. It really isn't. They're two different, and they are two different stories.
Yep, they do. And they do make an interesting story, but it relates for us in terms of leadership issues, which I'd like to focus on, is still with one more comment here.
According to the priestly text, the leader of the rebellion was Korah, who was a Levite. Whereas, according to the J text, these other characters were also involved who were not Levites.
Interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. Rebecca?
I keep thinking about the word holy, and what is it that makes someone holy? And I think we can safely say that in all religions, there's always a man or a woman who is holy. And what is that special characteristic that makes those individuals holy? And after rereading the story again, it seems to me that holy is when God comes through you and speaks through you to the congregation for whatever religion that may be. And I'm thinking that Korah did not recognize that fact that God was actually speaking through Moses versus Moses speaking in a leadership role.
Good. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Mara and Harv, I see your hand, and then I want to go to this comment by Rachel Cowan.
So I just wanted to further Rebecca's point and say that so Torah tells us we are to be holy. And the way we are to be holy is to observe the commandments, observe mitzvot, and by doing that, we bring God's presence into the world.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's the act of doing the things that uplift us in relationship to other people, and that is a holy experience. So Rachel Cowan is going to go onto that in a different riff, but on the same way. She was one of my teachers at the Spirituality Institute, and she died relatively young of cancer. But she writes here, somebody like to read?
But it is not only public leaders who play Korach's role today. We too live in an ongoing conflict between inner Moses and inner Korach, between humility and arrogance, selflessness and selflessness. And until we can hear the difference between those two voices, our actions will not be effective in countering the power of the Korachs at large in the world. We need to be clear when we speak from that needy, small-minded self that advises us to act, or when it is that wise voice that speaks from the deepest values and truth. What is the message here? History has a habit of repeating itself, doesn't it, Rabbi?
Gives us a time to practice, to really reflect internally, to say, where is my ego speaking? And where is the wisdom of the ages coming through me? Where is the wisdom of my tradition in terms of caring for the poor, welcoming the stranger, feeding the needy, standing up for every person who's created in God's image, and seeing that as the inner Moses that we can act in the world, which is what Mara you were referring to. And when I think of this parsha, I like this particular commentary of understanding that each of us has an inner Korach, that deep dark side, that sense of wanting to be recognized, that ego-ness happens. And how do we also tame it and listen to what are the real issues that are here in my heart, that are here in society, and how do we discern the voices that speak from our deepest values as we enter every single day. So I want to say Shabbat Shalom so that we have time for Kaddish and a prayer for this time of war. Thank you all very much. So this is by Evan Leader. I didn't print out one of the temple things, but I found this in my prayer book. El Adonai ha-ruchot l'chol basar. Bless and bring peace to your children everywhere in this time of fear, pain, and confusion. Hear the cries of the hostages still held in the tunnels of Gaza. Bring them out of the darkness and the shadow of death, to hear and to see the light of day, to the loving arms of their families. Strength and courage to endure what they have to endure, and bring them home now. Give strength and courage to the people in Israel and Gaza who are demanding that their leaders turn to peace. Help their leaders be worthy of them. Help us all remember that we did not come in this world for sake of warfare and bloodshed. Heaven forbid, but rather we were given the gift of living in your image, so your light and love might be realized in the world. Please, Master of all life, help us to find a way to end bloodshed now. Help your children find the strength and courage to open to you a blessing of peace. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. If you're reciting Kaddish for someone, please stand when you hear their name, or if I don't call their name, or if I don't pronounce it correctly, please correct me, and we'll say Kaddish together. This is the Kaddish list for this Shabbat. Those who passed away during the past month: Frances Chapman, Marcia Ellen Edelman, who's the wife of the past president of the temple, Betty Fields, Cy Fields, Jamie Krug, and Steve Yanover, and those who died in the line of duty in America and in Israel and throughout the world today. We recall those yard sites that have occurred during this past week: Rochelle Wason Barish, Roger Berstock, Ray Berelson, Joseph Bialik, Jacob Blatt, Saul Blonder, Harry Bornstein, Brandt, Lynn Bratsberg, Irene Broom, Jocelyn Cooperman, Julie Eisenstadt, Lynn Fields, Jerome Fink, Mayor Frankel, Lloyd Gittleson, Etta Goldman, Barbara Goldschmidt, Lucille Green, Sarah Gurney, Michelle Renee Heimoff, Louis Hakimi, Russell Nathaniel Head, J. Daniel Hertz, Helen Hockenberg, Irene Howard, Michael Trilligator, Kayla Iskowitz, Harry Jaffe, Reuben Caden, Alan Kaplan, Hilda Kaplan, Martin Kaufman, George Kelman, Steve Kessler, Nasir Kozane, Sylvia Kupchak, Lillian Marion Kurtz, Hyman Longsum, Melbourne Levitt, Marvin Leibovitz, Alphonse Levy, Morris Levy, Lillian Lebowski, Bloom Margaret Lipman, Ronald Mankoff, Jerry Markle, Selma Melvin, Belle Marin, Ruth Handler Miller, Ruth Midling, Madeline Morans, Sylvia Morris, Andrew J. Natker, Isidore Pastor, Melvin Peters, Rose Pullman, Ronnie Kamer Coleman, Kenneth Renkamp, Carrie Reed, Donald Dranetsky, Jerome Rosenthal, Charles Royce, Martin Reuter, Stephen Safe, Rita Shaw, Walter Shamish, Isaac Shaw, Barrett Sloan, Martin Small, Jesse Sobel, Henry Sugarman, Sherwin Schwartz, Jania Spiro, Fred Tater, Goldie Tyfield, Louis James Weger, Dora Weinstein, Paul Weisberg, Marvin Weisburn, Jill Welsh, Joey Wolf. Are there additional names to add today?
Rebecca Gordon.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. We also recall all those who died in defense of the state of Israel and the United States of America. We join together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah v'alma Tibra Kirte v'amlich Malchute v'chayachon omechon chaye dechol Bnei Israel b'agalau v'chan kari v'imru Amen. Yehesh Rabba Mevorach Le'olam U'Maya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar Ale V'Yitalal Shmei Kucha Urechu Le'ela V'Yitol V'Ychata V'Shirata Tushbechata Tamiran V'Yalma V'Yibru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Mramav Uya Aseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. May you have a peaceful Shabbat and a peaceful, hopeful week. Take good care.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.